The entertainment industry is facing a crisis with nearly a $100 billion bidding war between Paramount and Netflix over Warner Brothers. This could go down as one of the biggest cases of corruption, corporate greed, and frankly, a blatant violation of antitrust laws in our lifetime. It would create a monopoly that would drastically depress the wages of actors, directors, producers, and anyone who works in film. It could kill the entire theatrical release process and increase the prices you pay for your streaming services. But even more so, it would give a disgusting amount of control to mega corporations and a handful of billionaires over the largest creative industry in the world. This merger could be so consequential that I had the opportunity to sit down with Senator Elizabeth Warren to hear her explain exactly how she thinks this could or might go through, what the fallouts would be, and how it will affect the film industry, actors, people like me and you paying for subscription services, and also what it means for the future of corporate consolidation. She's someone who has dedicated years of her life and career to being blatantly outspoken against corporations, a very big proponent of more antitrust laws and legislation that restricts the amount of consolidation these mega corporations can do. It is truly not every day when you get a chance to talk to a US senator. So it is an honor and a privilege to say, welcome back to Nikki and I. I'm your host, Nikki Reardon. Thank you for coming into this emergency bonus episode about a very crazy thing going on in our world right now that really could impact the democracy. It will impact the entire media ecosystem. It is going to absolutely wreck and completely decimate the film industry in many, many ways. And while my conversation with Elizabeth Warren was really, really fascinating, and she gives a lot of great detail as to like how those things have worked historically, I quickly want to give a bit of context into like the actual deal and acquisition itself, because I haven't seen a lot of people actually explain like what this money is being used for, how the $100 billion cash is raised. Spoiler, it's very shady. And also just like what the sort of consequences of each buyer would be. Because it's not just A or B. The real problem here is corporate consolidation, is these mega corporations monopolizing, and how the first and fourth biggest competitors in a category merging together is bad for everyone. For context, in 1983, there were roughly 50 companies that made up 90% of the US media market. In 2025, there are 5 companies that make up 90% of the US media market. Those companies are Paramount Skydance, Disney, Warner Brothers, Discovery, Comcast/NBCU, and Sony. That is also in addition to Netflix, which we'll talk about, which is the streaming part of that. But Netflix is actually bigger than all of those companies combined, more than twice the size. Like, for example, Disney is worth roughly $190 billion. Netflix is valued at around $400 billion. So those companies, those 5 that I was talking about, are the ones that own the most amount of media companies. So many things you would not even realize, like sports, HGTV, the Food Network, so many cable television shows. Then we have CBS, CNN, the news. Like, so many of these things are all under one massive conglomerate. Actually, there's only essentially 5 massive conglomerates, right? Then Netflix is the biggest streamer by a very wide margin and makes most of its own IP. So it doesn't own, like Netflix doesn't own something like a CNN or doesn't own a movie studio. Netflix is its own studio. It produces its own things. And then, of course, they license shows on the platform. But that's really where I want to get into the difference between these 2 bids. So there's a Netflix bid and a Paramount bid. So this idea of corporate consolidation is a trend that has been growing and rapidly growing since the 80s, right? And that is why there has been less amount of money in film and music and entertainment. That's why there are so many struggling actors. It's why there have been so many more strikes. We had the recent writers and SAG strike, we had the 2008 strike since then, because as these monopolies are forming and consolidating power, they are depressing wages of people and making the conditions of the industry worse for their own profit. And that's really why this deal is going to be so consequential, because it will be by far the biggest version of that to ever happen. And that's why I also want to break down the consequences of both of these bids and explain them very differently. So both Netflix and Paramount have placed a bid on Warner. Netflix is for $82.7 billion. However, the very key difference is that Netflix is only offering to buy HBO, Warner Brothers, DC Studios, Harry Potter, and New Line Cinema. So none of the cable TV stuff, the big ones being CNN, Food Network, HGTV, MLB, Discovery, etc. Because Netflix is in the business of replacing cable. Like, they don't really want any of those things. They don't care about those businesses. Their goal is to essentially make them obsolete. They want the rich IP, right? Like, they want things like Harry Potter and Game of Thrones and all of that to put on their platform. In comparison, the Paramount bid is for $108 billion cash for everything. That is inclusive of news specifically. That's actually one of the biggest reasons they want to buy it. They want to buy out CNN and things like that, because Larry Ellison, the second richest man in the world and coincidentally best friends with Donald Trump, has suddenly taken a very big interest in buying out any sort of media company or news system that opposes their agenda. Very interesting. Not at all coincidence, I'm sure. So their bid is an entirely cash offer, whereas Netflix is a combination of cash and stock, which is a very, very common way that corporations actually buy each other out. Very interesting thing about the Paramount bid is that Paramount is only worth $15 billion, yet their bid for Warner Brothers is $108 billion. So how did they get this money? Well, of course, we have the CEO of Skydance Paramount, David Ellison, goes to his daddy, who happens to be second richest person on earth, Larry Ellison, who then also joins forces with Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law. How crazy. But even that is not enough for $108 billion. So, of course, they go to sovereign wealth funds. The Saudis and Middle Eastern governments have contributed to this buyout, which is like the fucking Legion of Doom. Like, what do you mean? Like, just putting all the supervillains of Earth in one room together to buy out one of the last remaining institutions, to buy out CNN, to buy out Warner Bros. Like, it is insane. And I do think a very important hypocrisy to point out is, wasn't the whole reason TikTok needed to be sold because it was controlled by a government entity, a foreign government entity? But now Larry Ellison and David Ellison, who are the people who are about to buy TikTok, now want to buy Warner Brothers with sovereign wealth fund money? The hypocrisy, like, it is insane, right? And this is really, really where I want to talk about the consequences of these two bids, both of which terrible, but terrible in very, very different ways, right? What Netflix is trying to do essentially is monopolize the film industry. They are already the biggest streamer by far, the number one. They would be buying out the number 4 biggest streamer and also just some of the biggest IP ever made, right? Game of Thrones, Harry Potter, the entire DC universe. So their goal is to do that and jack up the subscription price, right? And also kind of a big goal of theirs is also to stop the theatrical release process, right? They don't want people paying to see a movie in theaters. They want to essentially make theaters non-existent anymore so that people can only watch movies via streaming and then jack up the price again. Whereas Paramount's bid is actually more so focused on controlling the media to kind of be a tool of the Trump administration, right? Like, if Paramount's acquisition got approved, they would own Paramount Studios, Warner Brothers Studios, CBS, CNN, DC Studios, Fandango, MTV, HBO, New Line Cinema, TNT Sports, Comedy Central, Nickelodeon, TBS, Oracle, Cartoon Network, HGTV, I think the Food Network, like, it goes on and on. It is literally would be like, the entire point is to be a kind mouthpiece for the regime, right? It is all scratch your back if you scratch my back, in the sense of like, I'm going to make this attempt to make this very, should be illegal acquisition. And the government's going to approve it on this sort of, maybe CNN suddenly won't be as left leaning as it was previously. So it puts us in this weird position. I would say that, the Netflix acquisition is much worse for the entertainment industry and the future of film and actors, but slightly better for democracy, whereas the Paramount one is really, really bad for democracy, but maybe slightly better for film and entertainment not being as deeply consolidated. But it's important to acknowledge that neither is a good outcome. That is something I'm really, really scared people seeing, that there's so much attention right now about this sort of, like Netflix acquisition, that if somebody else acquires Warner Brothers, that's going to be seen as a good thing, when it's like, no, the problem is corporate consolidation in any way in any industry. That always hurts the consumer. It always makes things more expensive. It always makes people get paid less. We learn about this in history, right? Monopoly's bad. They made a board game about it, actually, right? That is what's happening. The first and fourth biggest thing, merging these over $100 billion companies each, merging is not a good thing. Ever. And something else I asked Senator Warren about is how I'm really scared this is going to set a very dangerous precedent, right? Like, even if this is just, it starts as just an issue in the film industry or an issue with entertainment, what this really signals to every other mega corporation is like, you can merge with the biggest competitor. Number one, we'll approve it. You're number 4, you're number 5, you're number 6, whatever. Just get bought out. Who cares? Make a monopoly, right? And if that starts happening with grocery stores, your electricity bill, your phone bill, right? Like, that is where these dominoes are going to fall, right? Everyone's going to be like, well, we're a smaller company than Netflix. We're not $400 billion. Let's merge. And suddenly everything is monopolized, right? That is really why I think this could be a generational case, because I think it is going to set the precedent for what other corporations feel they can do. And also, I really want to talk about, a lot of how this is going to impact actors specifically, and directors and filmmakers and anyone who works for a movie studio, whatever. If you work in marketing at an agency or whatever, like, the consolidation of these things is bad for you. And that's really a lot of what Senator Warren and I talk about. So without further ado, I want to kick it off to that. Elizabeth Warren, I could not be more honored and excited to have you on Nikki at Night. Thank you so much for being willing to talk to me about this.
Oh, are you kidding? I'm delighted to be here with you. Let's talk movies and antitrust.
It is the case of the week, and something that I really think is maybe going to be a case of our lifetimes, honestly. And I really want to start with talking about, like, the whole antitrust legislation and monopolies as a whole. One, how do you think that this merger would impact actors and people actually working in the film industry?
Yeah, bingo. Exactly the right question. So let's just back up a little bit and think about how any business works, right? There are the people who actually do the work. In the movie industry, obviously, the people who pitch the scripts and do the makeup and move the movie sets around and drive the trucks, right? Those are the workers. They produce the product. There are the consumers. Those are the people like me who love to watch movies, right? Yeah. I'm a consumer, right? Those are the ones, and who pay for it. And then the third group are the investors, right? So what's happening right now with these merger deals is that the investors are saying, for one of the big ones, Netflix, they're saying, okay, we're the number 1 streamer in the world. We want to buy the number 4 streamer, Warner Brothers, and merge it with us, so we will be the number 111, bigger than ever streamer. And they're telling their investors, telling Wall Street, and we're going to make wheelbarrow loads of money. Now, this is the moment when you want to stop and put your hand on your wallet and say, how exactly are they planning to make more money? Is there anybody in America who thinks that if you have an even bigger corporation, they will make better movies? They have a plan.
Looking good.
Yeah, Nikki, they got a plan. And here's the plan. Squeeze the workers.
Yeah.
Who produce the product, and as backup, squeeze the consumers who buy the product. And that's how you get more money back over to the investors. So what is this going to mean if this merger occurs? there are fewer places to pitch your script,
Yeah.
fewer movies. Whether or not movies get made is based on whether or not a smaller number of people say, yeah, I think that's one that you could make money on and give a good return on investment to the
Yeah.
investors. And that's going to echo through the entire industry. And a particular problem with Netflix, because Netflix is a streamer. That's their
Yeah.
that's their groove.
Yeah.
Okay. But they think that the time spent in a movie theater is time not spent at home streaming.
Yeah, they want that money.
Exactly.
It's really
So
scary.
I think this is really scary for people who make movies.
I think so too. It is one, depressing the wages when there's less competition and options. And
Yep.
two, the entire idea of capitalism is built off of this idea of fair competition. Like,
Yes.
there is nothing less capitalism than one person owning 30% of all of a
Yes.
market. It's crazy. Like, that is not how you as a consumer want them to bid over the best thing and fight for
Exactly.
talent and have to pitch new innovative ideas. Like, you
Exactly.
benefit from more options.
That's how The Graduate gets made. No, I'm serious. When
Exactly.
there was a time that nobody thought that was the right kind of movie. And Dustin Hoffman playing somebody who was, 21 years old, I don't think so.
Right.
But it worked because somebody pitched it, and out of all the people they tried to sell it to, one said, I'll take it, I'll buy it. The movie industry is the best example of this, but understand, Nikki, I know you know this. Antitrust laws have been here for more than 100 years.
Yeah.
Because the same principle is true if you're talking about the aluminum industry, any industry, whether you're trying to make steel, whatever it is you're trying to make. The whole idea is that more competition, more players in the industry to say, I think that's a good idea, is what gives you innovation. And what we've studied is that when you see this kind of consolidation, when you see one outfit, one decision maker
Yeah.
running 30% of an entire industry, wages go down, but more to the point, innovation goes down because they get better at protecting their monopoly
Oh, yeah.
than they are at trying out that new idea.
And there's no incentive to try out the new idea anymore. Like, that's the whole point. It's like,
Yep.
we should want this differing of opinions and ideas. Like, it's a good thing that, Stranger Things is on Netflix and Game of Thrones is on HBO because
Exactly.
they made 3 more seasons of Game of Thrones
Exactly.
because of that, right? Like,
White Lotus, for those of us who are big White
yes,
Lotus
exactly.
fans, right?
Exactly.
Exactly
Or
right.
like our girl Jennifer Coolidge is trying to get those seasons made again,
Yep, exactly right. And I would say, look, I really believe in competition law. That's why we have these antitrust laws. But nowhere is that more important than in the movies.
Yeah.
Nowhere is it more important because this is where the people with real talent tell our stories back to us. This is where they tell us about what it means to about sexuality, about immigration, about growing up, about growing old, about failing, about being reborn. They tell us our stories. They are our national storytellers. To concentrate that with one corporate Yahoo, are you kidding me? That does not make it a better world. We need more studios, not fewer.
Yes.
More
I couldn't agree
streamers,
more.
not fewer.
And something I'm a very big believer in the power of media to like genuinely change people's hearts and
Yeah.
minds. Like something a quote of this show is that, art shapes culture, culture shapes people, and people shape the world.
Yeah.
And so much of the influence of as a person comes from the art and culture that you consume, and you can't look at that first domino and not expect it to knock over the entire train. You know what I mean? And this is something I really wanted to talk to you about specifically too, is like a big concern of mine with this merger is that it doesn't end here. This doesn't just become a case about entertainment monopolies. It becomes, oh, the Trump admin is willing to bend the knee to mega corporations. And now we get the first and fourth biggest grocery store merging, the fashion houses merging. Like we just enter an era of corporate consolidation. It's like, well, Netflix and HBO can do it. Why don't I do it? Like, is that a very real fear that you have?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Because as soon as the big boys see that they can grow by merging, and here's another one. Is there a CEO of a giant corporation on earth that doesn't want to be a CEO of an even bigger giant corporation and, and have his, and they mostly are his, paycheck based on that bigger CEO-ness that they are trying to run? That every one of them is looking left, looking right, and saying, not how can I grow by coming up with better customer service, not how can I grow by coming up with an innovative new product, how can I grow by trying to expand into a new area? Nope, it's how can I grow by buying up my competition
Yes.
and not having to compete with them and being afraid that those guys are going to come up with better customer service, innovative new products, and working into new areas. You can cut off that competition and be bigger all at once. What's not to love except that it's illegal?
Exactly. And this is, again, like, circling back to what I said earlier, like, you cannot say you are pro capitalism and business while also saying that you are pro consolidation.
Yep.
It is impossible. It
Yep.
is the root of how those things are friction against each other. And that's when people are reviewing this case and like thinking about their own beliefs, that is something I've really been trying to drill into people of
Yep.
like, you cannot think that there aren't consequences to this thing. And when you study how, great innovation and fair markets operate, the root of it is all of them innovating to beat each other.
That's right. That is supposed to be the beauty of markets and what markets bring you. They bring you ever better products at ever lower prices. That is basically the idea behind it. And as I mentioned earlier, what we've come to discover is it's not just good for the consumer when you have that kind of competition. It's good for workers.
Yeah.
Workers are paid more when
Yep.
there are more folks out there competing. One of the problems with the mergers, for example, on these grocery stores,
Oh my God.
is that as soon as it happens, the wages for people who work in grocery stores go down. There was recently a case where Random House was trying to buy another publisher. And what the court said is, wait a minute, what's going to happen is authors are just going to have fewer places to be able to sell their books.
Yeah.
And that's going to mean lower payment to those authors, as well as some books that'll just
Yeah.
never get published. And they said no on the
And
merger.
that's what's going to happen with writers' rooms. That's what's going to happen with directors. It's going to happen to actors, producers, video esters, set designers. Like, there's just entire ripple effect of all
Yep.
of these things that these people employ. Renting a place in Utah to shoot the movie or whatever, right?
Right.
Like, it impacts the entire way that the industry operates and moves. And
Yep.
the person who gets effed over is the American citizen, is
Yep.
the person paying for the service or not getting paid a fair wage to be in the thing.
Yep. And there's a particular problem. We talked about the Netflix trying to buy Warner Brothers, but there's also a problem with Paramount trying to do this in particular. So this is not Paramount's first rodeo. So remember, just a few months ago, Paramount is looking over about a merger with Skydance, and there are a lot of folks saying, bad idea. And Paramount does what? They settle a bogus lawsuit with Donald Trump for $16 million. Nice. And then when Stephen Colbert refers to that as, quote, a big fat bribe, Stephen Colbert gets the axe, right? And then Donald Trump's administration approves the merger. So now
The administration of free speech, I'll add to you.
yes. So now
Outrageous.
we're coming back for the second round here. And listen, in case anybody missed it, what Ellison, the head of Paramount Skydance now, said is one reason that his bid should be accepted by the shareholders of Warner Brothers is because they have a smoother path for getting the approval of the merger.
I wonder why.
Behind that, is he saying he already knows what parts of
Yeah.
Donald Trump you need to kiss to be able to get this thing through?
Or what
He already
CNN is or isn't going to be allowed to say.
Exactly. What is it? What is it that a president wants to be able to approve this? And let me say on this, never before that I know of in our history has an American president said on any merger that's being proposed that somehow he plans to be in the middle of the deal. Ixnay.
You're right.
You know, look, always before, it's been about you apply the law to the facts. You just,
Yeah.
what are the facts? Here's the law, and supposed to be an independent evaluation of what's going on. And it seems that Donald Trump wants to use his own ideas for what makes for an attractive merger here. But that's not the way it's supposed to work. It's supposed to be follow the law, because that's what works both for the workers and that's what works for the consumers. So let's stay together. Let's make a difference.
I would love that.
Okay.
I would love
Take
that.
care, Nikki. Bye-bye.
Have a good one.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. So that's where we are. It is a really terrifying thing happening. And again, to look at this as only an issue that will impact entertainment in film is just blatantly wrong. It is the precedent that will be set for the mega corporation consolidation of everything that is where this could take us, right? It is the dominoes falling. If a $400 billion company can merge with a $200 billion company, you think somebody that's a tenth of the size of that isn't going to do that. And then suddenly everything we have is consolidated even deeper than it already is. 5%, 5 companies control 90% of a media ecosystem. That is insane. So thank you so much for watching this. I really hope it was helpful or illuminating and explanatory in some way of how these sort of monopolies function. It was really an amazing, honestly, like crazy thing that I had the chance to do this. I am in shock, but very honored and appreciated to be able to like use this to talk to somebody in Congress who is like actively trying to oppose this. And it makes me proud to sort of like use this space in this show to be able to do that as someone who talks about entertainment and business a lot. So please share the episode, like it, comment on it. If there's anything we ever want to reach people from this show, like it is really this. It is so consequential that I need people to understand. I need people, moderates and people on the right, to understand. You could be the most pro-capitalism, most far-right person ever, and acknowledge that this is wrong. Acknowledge that the biggest and fourth biggest competitors of a category merging together is monopoly. It's just monopoly. We've all played the game before, right? So thank you so much. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all of that. I appreciate you for being here, and I'll see y'all next week. Bye.